Hi, everybody. Welcome to All Things Metaphysical podcast. This is episode 42 on 6/22/22. I am Gail.
I'm Kelly. How did we do that? Did we plan? We didn't even plan that.
We haven't been doing it for a while, but just in case there's new people watching, maybe we should tell everyone who's who. So today we're going to talk about a topic that can be difficult for a lot of people. So we're going to talk about transitioning and loss and how that affects us when we lose loved ones. So, Kelly, you want to start us off?
Sure. It seems like lately, so many people have lost loved ones. It's like, everyone is exiting stage left. Um, because of that, so many people are upset and they're angry and they're not sure how they should be feeling. I know a lot of people who are the shove it down and I'll deal with it later kind of people.
Mhm,
And what that does energetically when you don't let the person go
mhm,
is it kind of keeps them, or it can, if they're stronger than you are energetically, it probably won't. But often what we see is their spirit lingers.
mhm,
They don't have to. They can move on. They can be on to bigger and better things. But sometimes when you don't let them go, when you don't grieve them and talk about them and say goodbye and all of that stuff, um, it does have repercussions beyond yourself. I know
mhm,
it's a very, very difficult thing. Um, I've had a number of people throughout my life that I've known and loved that have, whoops, I don't know what's going on here. By the way, there we go. Killed it. Yeah. But have died through suicide. And
mhm,
that's always a really difficult one. I actually wrote a book about it.
mhm,
It's really a hard thing, but what you have to understand is it's not you.
mhm,
People that we love make decisions that, even though those decisions affect us deeply, um, you didn't make that decision.
mhm,
And honestly, having done my time as a volunteer on a suicide prevention hotline as well, there is nothing you could do. By the time that person has made that decision, there's nothing you can do. Pay attention to the people that you love while they're with us. And when you see someone going through something traumatic, or maybe it's just a series of little things, it doesn't have to be one big thing, encourage them to talk about it and how they're feeling. Because so often people who are really, really depressed
mhm,
and are considering suicide as an option, um, in their head, the story they're telling themselves is that people they love would be better off without them. That's not true.
mhm.
But unless you know someone is starting to go down that path, um, you don't know what's going through someone's head. I think maybe losing someone through suicide is the worst way to lose someone. I think, no one wants their loved one to have a serious illness where they linger in pain. But in some ways, that is a way for you to understand the inevitable. You know you're going through this. It is with my grandmother. You know the inevitable is coming. It's speeding up. You can see the end, and peacefully, she went in her sleep, which is how all of us should go, really. But when you lose someone through a suicide, you don't have any of that.
Mhm.
Um, the most recent person that I lost, I actually just spoke to a couple weeks ago, not even 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
And there was no indication. I had nothing during that conversation would make me think this person is depressed, this person wants out. And yet that's what happened. So it's kind of, I think, a more difficult way to accept, the loss of someone that you love. One thing that I do find, I used to work as a hospice counselor, so that's I have books on all of this. But one thing that I found working with individuals who were actively dying is the term that we used.
Mhm.
You listen to their stories because they have stories to tell, and you help them not be in pain, and you let them know that someone is there that cares about them if they don't already have a lot of family around them.
Mhm.
And then when they go, death can be a beautiful thing if all the stories are told. If everyone around them is saying, don't stay for me, but I've seen people delay dying. There have been people that I worked with that their family would tell me, I know she's supposed to be going. Why is she not going? And you and I have had this conversation about your own life. Sometimes people don't want to go with a room full of people. Sometimes they're waiting for someone to leave the room.
Yeah,
So that happens a lot too.
yeah, I can share that experience. So when my mom was, to use your term, actively dying, we had taken her back to the hospital and she was unconscious. And the doctors told us it was going to be it could be at any time.
Right.
And, so everyone came, said their goodbyes, and it was around 6 o'clock or something. I was the only one there. And depending on what people's belief systems is, let me put a caveat out there is I saw my great aunt reach down to transition my mom over. And my mom's like, no, I'm not going with her in the room.
Right.
And so I clearly heard 9:03. And then my friend came to sit with me for a while, and it's 10 to 9. I'm like, we have to go. And she's like, why do we have to go? I'm like, because my mother will be transitioning in about 15 minutes and does not want anyone here with her when she does it. She's
Yep.
like, no. And I'm like, yeah, seriously. I was told what time. And so I was in the parking lot and I'm like, I really want to run back up there. And I really, wanted to be there as a support, but, I honored my mom's wishes and I went home. And of course, at a quarter to 10, then I got the phone call saying, your mother transitioned. So, sometimes we get those messages, but we learn to not listen to them or to trust them. I mean, it was pretty clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, at those stages, it's really difficult because we have lots of feelings and, um, it's just how do you manage it? Especially after the people are gone, like they're at peace and sometimes they're in respite on the other side, working through what they need to work through, but ultimately their soul is at peace. And so the hard part is the people who are left on this side of the veil and all the feelings and emotions.
Right. And that's one thing. Theoretically, everybody is at peace on the other side.
Mhm.
But I've done paranormal investigations where we've had someone who was recently deceased come through and say, please let me go. And sometimes I think, usually that happens with those people who don't talk about the death, don't talk about their grief, don't talk about what they're feeling.
Mhm.
Usually those are the people that have the hardest time letting go.
Mhm.
Um, but it really depends. Every group of people, every family, blood related or not, is different.
Mhm.
And usually you'll have one or two people in a group who will be like, I get it. They're going, be at peace, enjoy the party on the other side, and that's it. But the rest of the people are like, no, don't go, don't leave. And I have seen someone screaming at her mother who was dying in hospice, screaming at her in the hospital bed, don't go, you can't leave me. Well, that's traumatic for another a number of reasons.
Mhm.
It's just, but you have to believe that they are out of pain on the other side, even someone who takes their own life.
You know, I really wanna jump in here because they really want me to make sure to make this point.
Okay.
that even if there is no one on the human side with the person, whether no matter how they're leaving the earth, there is a transport team that is with you, and loved ones are on the other side waiting. I'm going to start crying,
Yeah.
waiting on the other side when you cross over. So I think like some people have a hard time going, well, they were all alone. And I'm like, no, they weren't. They're never alone. There's always an energy, or depending on how you want to see it, with them, And like I was just at a funeral last week as well, and the hard part for me is in funerals, and I don't know about for you, and this might happen with other people too who are mediums, is I go to the funeral and I see like all the loved ones on the other side for all the funerals that are the one I'm at and the one before and after the one I'm at. And then, like, I saw all my relatives while the service was going on, and the person usually leaves if everyone is okay with the person leaving
Yeah.
halfway through their service. They usually leave. They just wanna see who was there and who came, and then they usually fully transition to the other side.
Yeah.
So, I have friends who are transport angels who help people cross over. Um, and I've helped with that from time to time, especially in natural disasters and war and stuff like that, because sometimes you need a group of people on this side to help people who maybe don't know that they've transitioned yet, to help them into the light.
Yeah, that happens on occasion. Usually, if it's a real abrupt, very quick death, you find people that don't realize they're gone. They don't realize they've died, and that's really that that's one of the hardest things I have to do during investigations is when we find someone who doesn't know they're gone. They don't know that they've died, and you have to tell them. And, sometimes people are like, well, now that makes sense, and other times people are like, no, no, no. And it's like, well, I can't just leave you here hanging out in these people's living room.
Mhm.
Um, but everyone transitions a little bit differently.
Mhm.
I know a lot of people believe that their soul is like on the other side for a period of time before they can come back and visit. That has not been my personal experience with people who have died. I have had people who have died and they're like in front of me in 10 seconds, and I'm like, oh no, what happened? But usually, uh, people, when I do readings that involve someone from the other side coming through, it's always the first or second thing they will say is, I love you and I'm fine.
Mhm. All right,
Okay.
I'm just gonna cry through this whole episode just to give everyone a heads up. One of our viewers wrote, "It's especially hard when it's a child or a teen because they don't want to leave their parents."
Yep. Yep.
So, being a transport angel can be really a difficult position to be in. Like, one of the names that someone gave me once, and I had a really hard time with it, was Angel of Death. And they're
Yeah.
like, "No, it's a really positive thing." And I'm like, okay, I'm glad you see it that way, because
Right.
like if people start talking to me about their loved ones who are sick, I'm one of those people, gift, curse, I haven't decided yet. It only works with people who are sick and transitioning. I always have an idea of when they're going to leave their body, regardless of how many people want them to stay. Like I had one with a friend ask me for help with this, and they're like, they really want him to stay. She can't lose another husband. I'm like, well, that's not going to happen.
Right.
So the best thing would be to start to get her some support around her, because no matter how much she wills him to stay, it's not going to happen. And they also want me to talk about, depending on what people's belief systems are,
Yep.
when we write our contracts of when we come back to Earth and what we're going to work on, there's our real endpoint, which is our death, our real death. And then there's different points that we've entered into our lives, if it gets too overbearing and we can't manage it, that we can leave early. So sometimes you'll see that with people who have a chronic or a terminal illness and then all of a sudden they get better. Well, it wasn't their end point yet. It was something they built in that if they really struggled, they could leave.
Right.
So I think it's just something to talk about and be aware of, that there's so much more to what we think about death and dying in our society, particularly. And I love the concept now that there's death doulas.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of what I evolved into working hospice was, people oftentimes they just want a guide. They just want to know, is this normal? How am I supposed to feel? I would have people all the time. How am I supposed to feel?
Mhm.
However you feel is exactly how you're supposed to feel. There's not a right or a wrong. I had a relative who passed after a very long, painful illness. And, you know, half of the family was, they can save her, they can put more meds, they can, and the other half of us were like, dude, she's dead, let's move along now. Let her go. Um, and either way, it's not that they were wrong for not wanting to let go. That's human nature. That's, I love this person so much, I don't ever want to lose them. But what they lose in all of this is you never really lose them. They're always around you. And all you have to do is say, it's okay to be around me. You need to give them permission.
I
But
think
when you do, they'll be around you.
Well, I think for
Absolutely.
some people, there needs to be some time and distance because they can't handle them leaving again then. So you need to be in an okay spot.
Yeah.
Um, it's such an interesting thing because my mother had such a fear of dying, which I'm sure was past life related,
Right.
and I was the only one who was willing to have those conversations with her. And it was such a blessing because I'm like, Mom, you're going to talk to me more from the other side than you talk to me now. And I also had this friend years ago, and this was the first person who saw me for me, and she was dying, and I went to her house. I wasn't going to go, but I could tell she was calling me. And her son and her husband are like, she's terrified to die. And I'm like, and then they asked me when she was going to die, and I told them because they really wanted to know. And I said, that's okay. I will meditate and I will journey with her and I will take her to the light so that she can see what it's like and what happens. And then
Mhm.
we'll come back together so that she can start to have a taste with it. I did that with one of my grandmothers as well, who was afraid to go. And so there's lots of ways that we can help. I mean, that's not something I've ever talked about before that I've done that. Um, but there's all different kinds of way that you can help people.
The thing is, do check on people. What happens is everyone rushes in when there is a death. And then over, days, weeks, they forget all about it. They don't want to upset the person, so they don't call. And the surviving person feels very, very, very alone.
Mhm.
Um, you have to know that it's okay to talk to them about the person who has transitioned because it's it happened. Don't gloss over it. Don't pretend it didn't happen. I had someone, um, and it was a client. I had worked with her mother through hospice, and when she transitioned, I just somehow the daughter became my client. It was just weird. And she called me one day and she said, I'm not okay. I need to schedule an appointment with you. I said, what's going on? She said, I just told someone who asked where my mom was that she was on vacation in Europe. Okay, that's not dealing with the loss of your mother. That is completely dissociating from anything that resembles life in the present moment and normality. that's a real common thing for people to do.
Mhm.
And, I think a lot of that could be resolved if we would just remember this person lost someone. I need to check on them.
Mhm.
People get lost that way. They get lost in their grief and they don't see a light and they just wallow in it and they spiral down. And then you can lose two people in your life instead of just one. So I think that's a really important thing is it's okay to talk about the person who transitioned. It's if you make someone cry, those are tears that are grief and that's perfectly normal. Don't feel weird about that.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot that happens when someone transitions that we don't talk about, and it's important to talk about it. Uh,
Well, two things. I want to circle back around. So one of the viewers wrote when I was talking about, I don't know if it's a gift or a curse that I am aware of these things. And this person wrote, "It. I feel is it a gift because you, as a medium, are one of the last humans a beautiful soul has contact with." You know, and then the part about grief, and I remember when people said this to me, because I lost my parents 2 years apart. And then you also go through this feeling of being an orphan. It's the weirdest thing, even though you know it's coming.
yeah,
I guess there's three things I want to cover. So it's also about, I don't know how many people said to me, well, you just need to get through the first year, the first of everything, like the first anniversary, their first birthday. I'm like, that's not true. I'm like, it doesn't get easier. It just changes because you learn to accept it and move on with your life. The loss is still the same. It's like your container to hold it gets bigger.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It doesn't. What we do is we grow enough to incorporate the loss into who we are,
Mhm.
and that person is never truly gone. I've said that before. I mean, I have talked to dead people all of my life. I can reach out and generally get the one that I want to talk to, and I realize that's a gift.
Mhm.
But it's just keep in touch with people who've lost someone. That's the main thing.
One of our viewers wrote, wow, first time I ever tuned in and finding this helpful since I watched my husband die.
Yeah.
We are really glad that you're here and we're really glad that this is helpful for you. Um, Again, it doesn't get easier. I mean, it's a great service to be present with someone while they're transitioning.
Yeah.
It's just it's hard on humans who stay here and have to deal with that feeling aspect of things.
Yeah.
And
I
just go ahead.
I have had people from the other side literally say, "I'm good. Stop worrying. You're making me nervous over here, and I shouldn't be nervous over here." And it just I wish everyone could have a glimpse of what it's like to be
Mhm.
able to have to feel them around. And I think everyone has the ability. They
Mhm.
truly do. But someone I was very, very close to early in my adult life um, died. A really tragic, horrible thing. Right when everything was about to blow up for this person, and everything was going to happen for him, and we had a dog, and this dog had this horrendous squeaky toy. It had bells and it, you know, jingled and it sang something, and it was just a horrible toy. And 3 days after he transitioned, I was taking a shower, and that stupid toy that was up on the bathroom counter started playing. And at that point, it didn't have batteries in it, So and I knew that was him saying, "Hey, you know, still here,
Mhm.
still goofy as ever." And that people should find more comfort in that than they do. People get scared when someone tries to reach out from the other side instead of saying, "Wow, thank you for, saying hi."
Mostly for people who have a hard time seeing like people, they come in dreams and like you have these dreams and it's like, was that real or was that a dream? Chances are it was real and you need to think it was a dream in order to be able to manage it.
Yeah.
So oftentimes our loved ones will come through in our dream time.
Uh,
And
or or you'll hear a song that was their favorite song, or I had a, well, I guess ex-mother-in-law, however that works. Anyway, she was my mother-in-law when she died. And we were close, and she would talk to me about the dragonflies. She loved dragonflies.
mm,
And when she died, I, because of weirdness, I could not attend. And she sent me dragonflies in the winter.
mhm,
And I'm like, well, that's really weird. There's, oh, wait, hello, Fanny. And it was like, but in the winter, there were dragonflies.
mhm,
Things like that is what can happen if you're open for it.
mhm. And one of our viewers said my second year was harder than the first, and I slipped into solitude because I thought I was not normal. 10
Oh,
years from now, it could still be just as bad as the first year. The thing to really watch for is like different triggers around it. Like I'll be fine, and all of a sudden, like I'll have a memory, or I'll see something that I used to watch with my parents or something like that, and then I'll just start crying because it's like I'm thinking about them. I know they're with me, and it just brings up a lot of feelings and emotions. And I think the biggest thing to take away is there's no right way to grieve. Like
no, there's not.
society tries to force us into a way of grieving, but for each person, it's going to look different, and how we're going to do it is going to be different.
Absolutely.
And I just think that that's really important to talk about. Because a lot of people said, I don't know how many people said to me it gets better after the first year. And after about the fifth person, I'm just like, really? That's not helpful because this is 3 years in now and it's not better for me yet.
Right.
And sometimes it's a difficult situation. Like I said, my parents died 2 years apart. So my mom died first. And I never got to grieve my mom because I was so busy taking care of my dad because he wasn't doing well. So that when he transitioned, it was like I lost both my parents at the same time. So I think you just have to honor wherever you are and what that process is going to look like.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there, number one, there's no such thing as normal.
Mhm.
And number two, whatever you feel is going to be normal for you. I know there are so many books written that I've seen people buy and I've watched them read that were so not helpful. You expect to grieve for 2 years and then, no, 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 no. My grandmother died in 93. There are still days where I can hear a song, or I can see something, or something will happen that would remind me of her. And I am right back there in 1993, having just lost her. And that's going to happen the rest of my life. I know that. You
Mhm.
know, we don't ever stop missing someone who is close to us.
Mhm.
We just learn to, okay, that's mine now, and move on. It's just really, um, well, there are a whole bunch of things that as a society we need to rethink how we do. But the end of life is really something that should be discussed more openly.
As someone wrote, if you didn't have love, you wouldn't have grief.
Exactly.
Sometimes grief can come out of hatred too, or strong dislike. Like some people never worked through their issues and are then very upset that that person's gone because then they feel like they can never work through the issues. And trust me, even though the person's gone, you can still work through your issues.
Oh, you can. Um, During my life, I never met my father while he was alive. Never met him, never knew him, didn't even know his name.
Hmm.
And when he died, I knew it. And this strange person is coming to me saying, I'm your father. And I'm like, you don't look like Darth Vader. That's what went through my head, is really.
Hmm.
But we still were able to work through things, you know, and that was kind of hard on me, weirdly, because what I grieved wasn't the death of someone I never knew. It was the fact that I never knew them.
Mhm.
And that was a really hard thing for me to go through. And that took years to get through that one. It was that was tough.
And again, it's about allowing yourself to go through it. That it doesn't, I think that sometimes our support people get like, well, why aren't you past it yet? It's been this long. And it's just like, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what they think. It doesn't matter what they say. You need to take the amount of time it's going to take for you and do it the way that you need to do it.
Don't think it is going to be done in one, progression either, because you're going to get to the point where you think, I'm all right. And then the next day, I promise you without fail, it's not going to be all right anymore. And
Mm.
all of that is normal. It really, really is. You go through the stages of grief over and over and over again.
And not necessarily in order,
Mm-mm, no.
because you can get back to anger really quickly.
Yeah,
So,
that was a big one for me with the loss of my biological father that I never knew. And
mhm.
it's like I was like 33 when he died, and I was like, I'm 33. You waited till you were dead to come and meet me. I mean, come on. But it's you just have to recognize it for what it is.
Mhm.
And if you are slightly sensitive or an empath, that's going to really hit you hard because you'll pick up things from other people
Mhm.
who are grieving in their own way, and can really pile on. So
Mhm.
make sure when you're thinking about something or when a feeling hits you out of nowhere, make sure it's your own,
Mhm.
because sometimes you pick up how other people around you are feeling,
Mhm.
especially if you're close to them too.
So again, if anyone else is watching and you have questions and you want to answer or just give us feedback on what you think about the podcast today, that's great. If things come up for people when they watch this one, because this is a really difficult topic,
Yeah.
please feel free to reach out to Kelly or myself.
Yep.
Um, you can email Kelly. What's your email, Kelly?
Fitzgerald, FitzGeraldToo, like Fitzgerald 2 at yahoo.com.
And you can reach out to me. Probably the easiest email is gail.alexander1244 at gmail.com. So we're happy to answer questions, or if there's things that you want us to talk about in future shows, please let us know that as well. So,
This has
you know,
been anything but our normal show. I
and we actually stayed on topic for most of it,
know,
which is unusual for us.
fresh winds, fresh winds. Yeah, it just, it is a topic that we don't talk about enough. How many people have you known that lost someone suddenly and they were like, I don't even know what they want? Or how many people die without a will? Well,
Mhm.
they must have one somewhere, right? No, we don't talk because we don't talk about it. So we should talk about it.
So I feel like even though it's a little bit shorter than most of our shows, I just feel like this is a good place to stop before
Yep.
going on to something else. So again, feel free to reach out to us, contact us if you need something. Please subscribe and like our channel on YouTube, and comments are great. And we will see you guys all again next week. Let us
Yep.
know if there's something, even if it's a difficult topic, if there's something that you want us to talk about. We'll pretty much talk about anything.
Yep.
So we will see you guys all again next week. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.